Welcome back to the Smugglers Den. This is episode 7. I'm Tiny Grimes, and I'd like to thank swdestiny.com for hosting the Smugglers Den. It's a great website to hit for all kinds of your Destiny needs. Also, remember we're being sponsored by Broken Egg Games. You can check out brokenegggames.com. When you go to check out, make sure to type TG Games in the discount code coupon to help support the channel. And if you're in the mood to be really generous, you can head on over to the Patreon at Patreon Tiny Grimes. So this week we're joined by Jason Flanzer. How you doing, Jason?
I'm doing all right, Tiny. How are you?
I'm doing great. I actually made it out to a shop last night. Got to play in person for a good 5 hours with a new deck. Had a ton of fun. How about yourself?
I've been playing a lot of Destiny 2 live and online, and unfortunately I was feeling a little under the weather yesterday. Picking it up today, I was hoping to get some games against you, but, you know, we'll do what we can.
Yeah. Well, it was really fun because for those of you out there who follow Game of Thrones, my good friend John Bruno, who's a 2-time world champion, we're good friends, and I've been trying to get him to play Destiny, and he's basically said, I'm not buying any cards. So I'm being the crack dealer. I'm like, hey man, you don't need to buy anything. I'll hook you up your first couple batches for free, man. Just come on out. So I've been supplying him decks, and we've been having a lot of fun together.
Yeah, it's great to see Bruno out and about, and I'm glad to hear that he's liking it. I'd like to get a game in with him.
Yeah, it's been fun. So I'm going to talk about real quick the deck that I've been playing. We like to do this every week. What have we been playing? I've been playing a Dooku Jabba deck, and it started out as a very similar list to what other people had been running. People were talking about on the Knights of Ren this past week. That's a really good list, don't get me wrong. But I've been eyeballing prized possession for quite some time and looking at this as just an amazing answer to stuff like Grievous and Vader and Han Solo. And maybe these aren't the best decks right now, but still, just taking a die away seems so good. And then I started looking at Confiscation, and I was like, this card is kind of broken. And when you put that together with Disarm, you have probably the most expensive deck you'll ever encounter, Jason. But dang, you got a lot of removal. And this is permanent removal. This is no electroshock. This is your jetpack is off the table, boy.
Yeah, I think that's pretty nasty. I mean, specifically Confiscation is a card that I think needs to be played a lot more. I think that card's a really good way to leverage resources and really put your opponent in a tight bind, because the reality is if they want to play it again, you end up trading the resources, but they lose their die. So you're controlling them and taking their actions away. So it's actually, in my opinion, pretty good, because the action they spent playing it is the same action that you're going to spend playing your card. So they have to spend yet another action on another turn, most likely, and the resources again, and they lose their die. A lot of control is there.
Yeah, I feel like it's a really great card if you have more resources. So if you're playing against like a Jango deck that wants to constantly load up Jango and play tricks and play backup muscles, or you're playing against a Vader Raider deck that has no resources, right? It put 3 into Kylo's Saber, it rolled a big damage side, and it was like, yep. You confiscate it, and they're like, hey, I may never play that card again. Like, that was a one-off. I happen to have 3 resources. I'm finding Confiscation to be probably the most underrated card in the game right now.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. If you have the deck that can make use of that, and people are fighting for every inch that they have, then Confiscation is just going to make it that much worse. And it does also give some really good tools to the villain side, where I believe that, yellow villains are obviously good, but a lot of the characters that really make yellow villains so great. But you and I have talked about cards like Fight Dirty. Obviously he doesn't like you, and now Confiscation, much less potentially other cards that can really make some other things shine, as we can talk about as we move through the podcast. But I think yellow villains have quite a good suite of events as well, Confiscation being maybe near the top.
Yeah, I was thinking about more and more, and I was like, okay, Electroshock is awesome, right? It's an amazing card. It costs 1. For 1 more, you usually get a little bit better. But in the case of Confiscation, if you're dealing with a jetpack either way, for 1, you can Electroshock only the +2 side, not even the +3 side. But for 2, you permanently remove jetpack from the table, especially if you have mill to go with it, and you're just discarding their hand, perhaps hitting that jetpack. And if they have no resources, they have to replay it. It takes both actions. It takes resources. It just seems crazy strong to me.
Yeah, I mean, the math that I laid out before, you are taking a lot of things from them. And like
Yeah.
you said, potentially with the discard, it could be permanent.
Yep. And it feels like a lot of the problems I've been having with these late game decks is like, how do I really leverage this? Sure, maybe I can Crime Lord them, but you know what? Jabba's a big fat target. When you see Jabba, you kill Jabba. That's just how you play Star Wars Destiny. And so you're never going to get to play Crime Lord and have it sit there. So you're going to have to play like some sort of ace in the hole into Crime Lord and hope that the stars align, and sometimes they do. But I feel like that's not enough to be like, all right, I'm not going to play the awesome aggro decks. I'm going to play an endgame deck just to get to a maybe Crime Lord. I don't think that's viable. Mill is a little too slow, I usually find, for villains. But when you throw all these control pieces in there, suddenly it becomes way more reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to slow the game down. It's much like any good athlete, if you're familiar with like basketball or football, where you're really looking to just slow the game down so that your strength can come to fruition. And this is the same kind of thing because the game right now is very fast,
Oh, yeah.
and the tournament format is going to make it even faster.
Oh, yeah.
You need to make sure that you're doing what you want and imposing your will upon your opponent.
Yeah, another card that I've really been liking is Prized Possession. And this one, I could see this one becoming only a 1-of in the deck at some point because I like it, but boy, this card is expensive, man. It costs 4. Yeah, you get to remove one of their character dice pretty much permanently because you put it on Dooku, and Dooku's the last guy they're going to kill anyway. But what I like about it is I don't play it as like, I want to capture one of Han's dice. I'm going to play this as soon as I can. I play it as a big-time blowout card, like an Electroshock, only it's permanent. So it costs a lot, but when it happens, your opponent looks at you like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, if you're playing a 3-dice deck and you're really leaning on a very high-quality die, such as Darth Vader,
Yeah.
this card could be massive.
Yeah, or Grievous. Both of those are just
or
really
Luke.
bad.
I mean, how the Luke deck is super like dependent on his damage.
You know what's funny? If I was playing against Luke Akbar, I would take the Akbar die.
Yeah, I mean, to prevent the shenanigans because you have other control.
Yep, that takes away all the tricks, and then it's just like, oh, Luke rolled out damage. I'll handle that. So it's just, I really like, what I like about the deck is it doesn't feel fair. So I played against a guy last night, and it was really funny because he's like, hey, man, we met at the shop last night. I was like, oh, cool, a fellow SoCal guy. And he's like, I want to, can I try this new deck? Yeah. So I played against him, and turn 3, I went ace into the hole, into Crime Lord, which says, basically roll out a die into the pool that's yellow. It didn't hit the special. I only had 2 resources he had claimed, but I had all these focus out. So I just went focus, resources, and then Crime Lord and Qui-Gon. And he was like, that doesn't seem right. I don't think you can do that. And I was like, well, what part can't I do? And he's like, I don't know, but it just doesn't feel right. And I was like, I agree with that.
That's pretty reminiscent of what we saw out of the highly publicized, as far as in Destiny is concerned, deck, the Vader Jabba deck that was being played and won the Destiny Shapers tournament up there, 52 people, and he was running the both Thermal and Crime Lord, I'm pretty sure, alongside Ace in the Hole. So a lot of power can come out of that.
Yeah, and then the whole rest of the game, he was just miserable. It was like he'd play an upgrade on his Rey, and I would just confiscate it. He was like, I don't see how this is a fun game. And I was like, I know, that's the point. Like, this deck does not allow your opponent to have fun, and if you're doing that, it means you're doing something really effective usually. So that's been exciting. All right, Jason, what has your deck been looking like that you've been playing or having fun with?
Well, I've been playing the same decks. I'm the kind of person that's known to kind of settle on an idea and continue to do it until it is either not good or great. So I'm still playing a Jango deck that I've been working on for a long time, and I'm still playing the all-blue heroes I've been working on for a long time. Now, I have been having fun making new decks, trying out things just for fun. I've been getting a friend of mine into the game, so playing things that aren't necessarily the highest finely tuned decks is seeming to be really fun for him and really fun for me. So I started with a Rainbow Artillery deck. Pretty standard ATSTs, TIE fighters alongside 2 stormtroopers, Balatik and Night Sister. It's not, it's not a brand new concept, but it is certainly fun. And, you just mull hard for drudge work and for Underworld and then go from there.
Yep.
The deck has a lot of interesting removal, which is pretty good. Some things you have red villain like the best defense.
Yeah.
And then obviously being able to bring your guys back. It does have some potential moves that I really like. And what I like is once you get set up, barring like deflect and reversal, it's pretty tough to... You can remove the die, sure, but dealing with them is a different thing because you have to deal with them every single turn. I was able to blow up a launch bay with my ATST the other day, which felt really great.
Wow.
So there's a lot of fun things you can do, and man, every time I play the TIE Fighter, it feels better because I've seen more shields and more shields, shields on shields, hunker downs, focusing one guy, and then by the time you get over to the other guy, there's 3 shields. Well, if your TIE Fighter can strip them off, it's just as good as 3 damage. And sometimes, like one time, I think I stripped off 6 total shields between 3 characters against a mill deck. So it's a lot of fun. Not saying it's top tier, but it is certainly fun. If you're looking to spam out those guys, I think there's something there, and I think it'll only get better with time.
Yeah, how many ATSTs were you able to get out? Did you ever get 2 out at once?
I never got 2, but I did get a TIE Fighter and that. I'm also playing Black Market, which has been a very fun little card.
Okay.
Obviously, if you're playing against a mill matchup, you're not going to be using its special as much, but it does allow you to draw cards, play more cards, and it also has +2 range damage, which is pretty nice on that side. So the amount of resources you have, you're going to be able to play most of the cards in your hand every turn, unless they're situational.
Sure. So
it's pretty good just to get more things out there. I'm running 1 speeder bike, 2 of the red support, the TIE Fighter and the HSD, and then 2 Black Markets. That's kind of like my support package. I have 1 Power of the Dark Side as well.
Nice.
So I've got a lot of fun manipulation. So it's been a good time.
I really like Black Market. It's one of these cards that if it costs 2, it would be a staple in like every deck because the sides are really good. 2 shield, 2 focus, +2. You can potentially draw cards. But at 3 cost, it has to be in the right deck, right? Like you got to be making a lot of money to be able to make this happen.
Yeah, dropping it down doesn't feel good. You're not super happy about it, but as the game goes on, you can get it. And like I said, if you draw Drudge Work and Underworld Connections turn 1, you're just floating in money because you have so many dudes. They're just shooting stuff. And like I said, that focus is actually really good with Stormtroopers because a 2 damage for node bucks on your guys, 2 of them, you can do a lot of damage. You actually have it on 3 guys total, and Balatik has a +2, so it's pretty fun.
That sounds like a good deck. Real quick, going back to mine, I actually recorded a game today with it, so it'll be going up. After you hear this podcast, check the next day. There should be a game up of my Dooku Jabba deck. All right, so let's move real quick to tournament rules. We talked about this a little bit already, but tournament rules are out. And the round times seem short to me. 35-minute rounds. We'll start there before we even talk about the cut. What do you think about the 35-minute rounds? Do you have a problem with them? Do you think they're fine? What are your thoughts?
I think that because it includes the setup, this is a reasonable amount of time to play a game of Star Wars Destiny with all the trimming. If you want to play mill, if you want to play control, you might have to play a little fast. But you will, I think, within 35 minutes, especially with the setup already being done, that's an acceptable amount of time.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm a little nervous for like really hardcore late game decks. Like my deck, I played earlier, it took 48 minutes, and it is on Tabletop Simulator. It could probably be a little faster. I'm a little bit less experienced with it because I just built it, so I could probably play it a little faster. But if you're gonna go 8-9 rounds, that might not be feasible in 35 minutes. I'm not entirely sure on that one.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not saying it's a good number, like a perfect number, but you do have to keep time in consideration, both for running events and for doing what you need to do in the game. You can't have people sitting around too long if games are actually really short as well. So I think 35 minutes is good. I could see 40, but it seems then we extrapolate and we want to look what we're going to complain about is when you get to the best of 3s.
Yeah.
If we thought 40 was the standard plus a setup time, it would end up being just a really impossibly long best of 3 round.
Yeah, I mean, let's start there. I think it was a really wise decision to make the Swiss best of one. I don't think you can do best of three Swiss rounds. The game, I think some people are under the impression that the game takes like 12 minutes, and if you play Veer's Jango versus Veer's Jango and neither of you thinks, then yeah, you can do a 12-minute game. But I think the norm is more like 25 minutes, even with aggro decks.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you're going to be looking, and maybe even 30. I think that some games, just because people play a little slow or they take a little bit of thinking time, it can take a little bit longer.
Yeah, my real concern is that everyone seems to be fairly happy with the time right now, but it's a really heavy aggro meta. I'm more concerned when we get to a heavy control meta, and it's control deck versus control deck all day. I have a feeling a lot of those decks would go to time in only 35 minutes.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, people are going to have to play faster. I mean, I'd love to see this game on a chess clock, personally. I think that would be the best way to play this game.
Yes.
Because, it's like, I'm going to do this, then pass, and then...
You each have 15 minutes. I could go for that. You each have 15 minutes. If you run out of time, you lose.
I mean, yeah. And usually you could probably even do 20, because the reality is that it's unlikely that you'll use all the time.
Have you ever played with a chess clock?
Yes, I have played, but chess is a lot shorter of a decision to make. We play War Machine on chess clocks, for example.
Oh, okay.
Usually,
I didn't know that. Okay.
Usually the games are, because War Machine, the times is much longer, so it's not so tedious to tap the clock, because you take a 5 to 12 minute turn and then you pass.
Gotcha.
But the reality is, it's nice because it keeps people honest, and that way, if you want to have your big turn that you spend your time doing stuff, you can do that. If you want to take some time to think about a decision in Destiny, you can do that, but it's on your time.
Yeah. That's what I worry about, is that I always have a couple of moments a game where it's a really tough decision. I've got 2 resources. I'm playing against a Jango deck. What do? Do I pay the 2 to put the Force Choke on Dooku? Do I roll Dooku immediately to provoke an early Jango roll? Do I save my resources for my Electroshock in case they don't hit perfect and I can handle them, or do I play a hunker down in preparation for Jango's God roll? There's 4 decisions. They're all decent. It's a difficult decision. I find that happens several times a game where you're really having to make a decision, and it takes a little while.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's not so easy, and because one great thing about the game is the alternating activations and how you're always participating in the game. But sometimes the bad part is it's not a game where you can sit back and be like, okay, I know what I need to do now, while they're doing their turn.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of games, because they're not so interactive, you do actually get to, when it's your turn to act, it's often by the time you formulate a plan, you have a majority of the information that they're going to give you on their turn. Sure, sometimes the very last thing that they do on their turn is a bomb, and that might slow it down. But other than that, you're going to have time to think about what is best for you and what is the play given the resources and understanding that you have in your game.
Yeah, and I think that's what separates the good players from the not as good players, is being able to adjust on the fly, right? So if your opponent rolls their dice out and you're like, boom, here's my plan. No matter what, this is my plan. That's not good. Every action your opponent takes, you actually need to reformulate your plan slightly at least, and if they do something surprising, perhaps completely reformulate it from the ground up, and that takes a little bit of time.
It does, yeah. Especially if it's there's some really bursty plays, or even if it's just a single Sith holocron rolling, you don't know what's coming out of it, and then you don't know what the result's going to be.
Yep. It's that's what I love about the game, is how flexible you have to be, but I feel like that takes some time. What really worries me, Jason, and this is the part that worries me most, is if your opponent sees you're playing a hardcore mill deck. Let's say they see you drop Vader Jabba. That looks like a mill Crime Lord deck to me. If you, right from the very first moment of the game, I'm not saying slow play, you play methodical. When you turn your character, you just kind of slowly turn it, and you pick up your dice in a methodical way, and you shake them, and you roll them in a methodical way. That adds quite a bit of time to the game if you know you're the deck that's doing the damage and they're not doing much damage.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's really not a good tiebreaker form, which I guess we should kind of talk about. First tiebreaker for games is going to be damage on characters.
Yep.
And then the second one, if I'm not mistaken, is decks in card, or decks in card. Cards in deck plus cards in hand.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I think so.
And then the third one is who has the battlefield. So
Always who has the battlefield.
And I like that. I mean,
Yeah, I do too.
It's kind of fun. So it makes the damage decks just a little bit better, regardless of the fact that it's almost like they should have flipped it, because the reality is that the damage decks are going to be better in the format.
Yep.
But the tiebreaker maybe should go to the mill deck.
Yeah.
So it's
the control deck. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a mill deck, but the late game deck. If you let them survive to the late game and it goes to time, then the late game deck has won, right? It's going to win. It just needs more time. Whereas the aggro deck's goal is to win quickly.
Correct. So I think, I don't want to say it's a mistake, but it certainly feels not as good. But I guess in kind, you can also just drag it out and then be like, oh, you tried to kill me, but you failed, and I have more cards in my deck. So it's going to be a bad situation either way. So I guess we should talk about, what does the best of 3 look like?
Real quick, I want to finish the best of 1. So I think we're in agreement that 35 minutes is fine, right? Like, in a perfect world, it's fine.
Yeah, no,
right?
I agree.
Okay.
I think that it would be okay.
So here's my message. Don't be a D-bag. Don't be the guy that makes the time have to be changed because there was an event and you slow played everyone, but you didn't slow play enough where a judge called you on it, and you won all your games against the aggro deck because you did 7 damage early and then just slowed the game down. Don't be that guy, okay?
I agree.
All right, so let's move to best of 3. Best of 3 to me, complete and utter disaster.
Yeah, I mean, let's take the figures that we were talking about before. So before your best of 3, you set up your game. That is off the clock.
Yep.
Then they're going to give you 90 minutes is the total time to play up to 3 games, which, first of all, even at that point, it's still less than 35 a game. Plus, you have to do your setup in between games 1 and 2 and between games 2 and 3. Yep. So you are looking at probably an additional 5 minutes, maybe more even, setting up.
Yep.
Because you got to clean up, you move your dice. I mean, you can try to be quick about it, but the reality is, with a mulligan and a decent shuffle, if it's a long game, you don't want to shuffle. All your cards are piled together.
Yep.
It could be quite a process. So let's just take 5 minutes off time. So now we have 85 minutes.
Yep.
To play 3 games that we agreed take 35 minutes without setup. So this is kind of like our without setup version. Mm-hmm. So you're looking at what should take 105. It's good. You're cutting 20 minutes off.
Yeah.
It's pretty absurd.
Then you add to that, it's the end of a long day, especially if you're at like a major event where you've played 5 rounds of Swiss. You're now 7 hours into the day. You know what?
6 rounds.
The brain doesn't work quite as quickly at that point for a lot of people. So now the games naturally are going a little bit slower. You're worn out. You're fatigued. You're having to double check things more often. And then in addition to that, there's way more on the line now. In Swiss, you're kind of like, whatever, I'm crushing these guys. It's fine. It's no big deal. But now everything is on the line. Everything slows down a little bit more. You're a little more methodical. You're a little bit more careful about your decision making, and you have substantially less time to finish games. I do not think a control on control has any chance of doing a best of 3. I think it becomes a best of 1.
Well, okay, that's not necessarily true. I think that they could get to the 3rd game.
Maybe. I think a control on control is going to go 1 3/4 games in the cut after 6 rounds of Swiss.
I don't know about that. We agreed that 35 minutes would be good, 40 minutes would be better. This is going to be with the 5-minute timer, 5 minutes short of that. So I think you'll probably be okay to get to your 3rd game.
Plus setup. Plus setup. Though.
Yeah, which we said is 5. Which we said is 2.5 minutes for 1 game, 5 for 2. So 5 minutes. So that's 40 is 85, still short of the 90. I think that here's the thing. It doesn't matter that it's just good enough for 2 because you need it to be good enough for 3.
Yes, that's the problem.
The fact that they didn't even triple the normal time, not including the additional setups, is insane to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yes. I will say this, though. You know what sounds totally insane to me? A 90-minute round of Destiny. So
just playing for that long.
Yeah, it's like both sound insane. So it's such a hard thing because a best of 1 cut does not sound good. A 90-minute round does not sound good. So what are you left with? I don't know how to do this. I would probably just say you do like a 45-minute best of 1.
I think double elim best of 1 would be best for the cut.
Yeah, that
So
might be
cut
best.
to a top 8 or a cut to a top 4, and you got to lose twice. Winner has to lose twice as well. So
Yeah,
if
I like that.
the guy who comes out losers bracket gets the finals, he's got to beat that guy twice to get out. That's going to give you quick games. It's going to let people not have to straggle around the store.
Yep.
It's going to make things nice and concise. It'll also put a lot of pressure on people. Also gives you a second chance, right?
Yeah, I like that a
So
lot.
it's still giving them that 2 out of 3 mentality where it's like, well, I lost the first one, but I can still come back and win. You can still be like, well, I lost the first match, but I can still win my way through the losers bracket to get to this final and win.
Yeah, because otherwise, I think what you have to do is like hour and 50 minutes to be really reasonable about this, and that's completely ridiculous. You can't have hour and 50-minute rounds of Destiny. That just destroys the whole point of Destiny.
Yeah, at least needs to be 3 times 35. So
Plus
that's,
5 for setup. That's
sure,
what I would say.
Yeah.
And so
Okay,
what is
that's
that?
fair.
Let's do the math
So
on
I
that.
think
What's 3 times
150,
35
right?
plus 5?
150.
Well, there you go.
150.
150.
There you go. Almost like you knew it before you said it.
I didn't. It just sounded reasonable to me.
I don't know if I believe you. I think that the double elim strategy is going to be because I've been thinking about it a lot, and to me, that's going to be the best. Now, if you know Jason Flanzer, he's going to say double elim for everything always because I love double elimination because it's great because you go in and you have a lifeline. You understand what is at stake and you understand what you need to do, and maybe you need to stretch out, maybe you need to make an aggressive play because you're in the situation that you're in. I love the way it feels. I love the way it looks. The tournament bracket is interesting. You could pretty much bet on it if you wanted to.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
It's just a fun format, and everyone goes in knowing that they're going to get to play a certain amount of games no matter what.
And then you can stretch the rounds to 45 at that point as well to really make it feel legit. Like you get 10 more minutes. You need to think a little bit. Go for it. You got 45 minutes for the cut. Double elim. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, because a top 8 in double elim I think is five total rounds. Maybe it could be up to 6. Is that right?
That's kind of long. I didn't really think about that. That's kind of long.
It could up to loser of the winner. If the loser beats the winner, you get another round out of it.
Sure.
But still, so yeah, I think it's 5, and then you would go up max of 6. But it's still not that bad considering that you were going to play 3 90-minute rounds already.
Yeah, exactly. Those 90-minute rounds, it sounds insane to me. Like, could you imagine if you win your game pretty quick? Like, you sweep them. It's aggro on aggro. It takes you a total of 28 minutes. And the other game goes 90 minutes. The full 90 goes to time. You had to sit there an hour. An hour. You're sitting there waiting for your game to start. That's not that tenable.
Yeah, I think that going to this, and I think you can even do 40. Just maybe a small extension of time. It's nice. Maybe have a rule for time being called other than just end it. Something like a trade of turns. Something like that. Which would be nice.
Turns or something.
Yeah, and that way it's like, well, you kind of know where you're going, and then you go to the tie breaks.
Yeah.
So 40 minutes, time gets called, you play out 2 more turns, so on and so forth.
Bottom line is, I do not think this system works. I don't think it works at all. 90-minute cut is crazy in both sides. It's too long and it's too short at the same time. If you have something that's both too long and too short, then it doesn't work.
Here you go, Tiny. You just have to make a control deck so good that it just wins 2 40-minute games. Or 2 45-minute games.
That's pretty much the plan. That has to be the plan. Right? Like,
yeah, if you want to play control, to me that sounds like the
plan. Yeah, if you play a control deck and you lose one in the cut, you've lost the cut because of the way the tiebreaker works.
Like Jango, or like you activate your character and then they're like time, and then right then, and then Jango's like, well, I rolled a damage, and I did a damage. That's the game.
This is how bad it is, though, Jason. Think about it this way: turn 2, they've gotten 2 jetpacks on Jango. You're playing the control deck. It's game 1. You activate Dooku, and they god roll you, and they kill Jabba. They kill Jabba right there, turn 2. You should just concede because you've lost, and you need to be able to have 2 more games. And you have no prayer of doing it if you try to finish that game.
Oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying if you get really unlucky in game 1, and then it's just like, well, now I have to sit here for another hour trying my best, but it's very unlikely I'm going to win time.
Yeah, you can't.
Because the reality
you have to immediately concede. You have to just immediately concede at that moment, so you have a prayer of finishing 2 more games.
Sure.
Which is ridiculous, because then all I have to do is play a tiny bit slow, and you have no shot at finishing. So that's my problem. Is it feels like one god roll from an aggro deck beats a control deck in a best of 3, which is just crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
All right, let's move on, because I'm going to get all animated and angry. I like your double limb. We should push for that.
We're going to have We are. We're gonna have the Tiny Grimes Games tournament format.
Oh, I like it. I like it. We'll push it. We'll push it hard. Everyone can ignore it, and then we'll move on.
Hey man, if you run a Tiny Grimes game tournament format, there's exclusive Broken Egg Games swag you get for those events.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize our sponsor was stepping up to support these things. I like it.
I mean, we gotta get good games out there.
All right. Well, let's talk about tournaments. Let's move to what we think are some of the best decks in the meta. I think the obvious one is pretty much anything with Jango. I'm just gonna start there. Like, I kind of worry, Jason, that Jango is broken. Do you have any concerns about that Jango is legit broken?
So when I play Jango, I'm like, Jango's broken. But I have played against a lot of Jango in my day as well, and I have won a lot of games against said Jango.
Yeah, same here.
So that makes me say he's not broken, but he's close. I mean, you did your much maligned tier list the other day, which my tier list, by the way, is completely different. I'm going to make one just to put it out there, just to be counterculture to you.
You know why yours is different? Because you're so wrong about the game, but go ahead.
I'm so right. Stormtrooper, top 3.
Wow. Wow.
Top 3 villain character.
Oh, my.
He is. He's in all the decks.
I gotta go now. I don't know what happened. The connection's going
He's
bad.
got 3 damage shots and a 7 for 7. He beat all of your algorithms for how good a character is. He fits the mold literally perfectly.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I will agree with that I put him way too low. I just threw him in and was like, yeah, whatever. And then someone pointed out, they're like, why the hell is Stormtrooper so low? I'm like, yeah, no, he goes in like every deck I've ever made, just about. Yeah, I guess he's a little bit higher, isn't he? And
like you have to have the criterium, and then you look at him, and there's almost no criterium he doesn't beat, unless you're like number of total faces that don't have blanks.
There you go. That's the only criteria I was using, so that's why he's so low.
That's why Command Presence is the best die in the game. Okay, so let's talk Jango. So I'm just not certain it's broken, but yeah, it's so good. And we all know cheating activations is great. That's what gives red its real power, because both Tactical Mastery and It's a Trap, these are things that red decks have that other decks don't. And Jango just gets to do that in your yellow deck, and maybe it even gets better if people are going crazy and putting some Sith holocrons on them and getting crazy force powers, not getting force powers before things can even happen, mind probes before you even play a card. There's a lot of options. Obviously, most likely he's just blowing you up with guns.
Yeah.
And it's just frustrating. It's a frustrating feeling because it really takes the luck and magnifies it.
Yeah, I feel like Rey is the perfect character. A couple turns a game, or if you're able to get the battlefield and really willing to invest in that, you can cheat actions, right? But you have to really work for it. Jango just goes, oh, I get to cheat every turn without doing anything. And I don't like that. I feel like if you build the game with a rule set, you can't have a card that every single turn breaks the rules of the game. It kind of like defeats the purpose of the game. It's no surprise that everyone looked at him and went, so he cheats every turn. Of course he's awesome.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, I guess it's because he's so expensive, but like the 10 points is, the 10 health is, I'm not saying it's high because it's really not, but it feels like that could have been his weakness, but he really not that weak there. Like he's not a 9, which he could have very easily been, and that last damage on Jango can be significant.
Yeah.
But you look at his die and you say it's kind of mediocre, but the reality is his die is not relevant. It's really just, can you stick a gun for all of your mods, and do you get to roll out activation? The answer is always yes to the first one, and so you're really, when you play Jango, just looking for a yes to the second question that I asked, or the first question I asked, which...
Yeah, the really scary thing to me about Jango...
That's it.
Is he gets better. He gets better every set, every upgrade that comes out. And even scarier, he is way undercosted at 12-16. Like, you know how many people are going to be able to pair with him at 14? Yeah. Oh my goodness. So I almost feel like he should have been Vader level expensive, and then that would balance this out, right? Like, yeah, you could load him up with upgrades, and he could still do crazy god rolls that you can't do anything about. But you know what? You can't put much with him. You get like one cruddy character with him if you go elite, or like one decent character if you go non-elite.
Yeah, he could have been a 14-18, and that would have been pretty, but that would have been a lot better for the situation. You don't get to cram a bunch of characters, because one of his weaknesses like it's kind of the health, but now if you bring 3 characters with Jango, it's feeling a lot better. Or obviously people who are playing Jango years, That's going to be the really upfront damage. But if you play 3 characters with them, you can take a long time to do the things you need to do.
Yeah.
And I'd like to reiterate, while sticking that gun is important, I'm not certain that his die is worth 4 points compared to getting another die from someone else that is kind of crappy.
Mm-hmm.
Because the reality is the ability is where you're looking to shine. You're looking to get those jetpacks and guns out right away.
Yep.
And here's the part that you kind of touched on, and I want to reiterate. There is so much more to come out for Jango.
Mm-hmm.
Yellow villains don't even have a gun.
Yeah. I mean, they have jetpack,
You know
but
those
it's
bounty
neutral.
hunters are... Sure,
Yeah.
but it's not a gun. There's
Yeah.
there's no solid face on it, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's
So-
true. It's not a gun, actually. It's a jetpack.
It's a modifier. So,
Yeah.
and these bounty hunters are going to get guns.
Yeah.
So, I mean, imagine with him with I imagine him with IG-88's gun, which is probably going to be absolutely ridiculous, or
Mm-hmm.
something like his own blaster, or Boba Fett's missile launcher,
Yep.
right? It's going to be these are going to be some pretty intense guns that are going to come out for Yellow.
Yeah.
And right now, it feels a little more balanced than it might be. You cannot give Yellow cheap guns Fantasy Flight. You just can't do it. That just would be Yellow villains specifically. Maybe Yellow heroes, but not Yellow villains.
I seriously think he's going to get an errata, and his errata is going to be his cost. I think his cost should be 15-19, but I think he'll get errata to 14-18.
I think 14-18 is fine. I think that it's good. I think that even just the 12 needed to be bumped. Even if it became a 13-17, it literally shifts the whole paradigm.
Yep.
It's like the Veers and the Han Rey, right? You're just it's just too perfect.
Yep.
It's too perfect of a fit, and it needs to just be slid a little bit.
Yeah. But the difference with Han Rey is it cheats sometimes, or you have to work really hard to keep cheating it. Jango just cheats.
While you're right, it does. I don't want to say that's tough because the consistency of Jango, it ends up being better than the Han Rey cheat. But the Han Rey cheat is often more frustrating, specifically in the beginning, specifically if there's a disrupt, but also specifically because he's gaining shields too while it's happening. So it's actually a pretty big momentum move.
Yeah.
To do those cheats. So.
Yeah, but killing Rey just eliminates all the problems, and that's the difference. In this deck, you have to kill Jango, and that deck, you have to kill Rey.
To be fair, Jango is just as easy to kill as Rey.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I really think 2 cards are going to get errated. That's going to be Holocron, and it's going to be Fett. If those 2 are errated, this game would be, perfect.
I still think Rey should be a point more expensive.
Maybe. We'll see. All right, so that's one meta deck is Jango, whatever the hell you want to put with Jango. Jango Veers is really good. Like Jason said, I really like Jango with 2 other characters to take advantage of the fact that he has a bonkers ability that's crazy cheap at 12. You have $18 more to do whatever you want with. That's insane.
Yep. Yeah, it definitely does not lean on you as hard early game, and yes, it is a little harder to stick those jetpacks, but it will let you leverage that, and they're gonna have to gun for Jango. We've already talked about this. You have to kill Jango.
Yep.
So when you get done killing Jango and you just have Veers left with no upgrades, that's nice, but having +5, +6 health over the top of that could be a difference between winning the game and losing the game.
Especially if you're able to get redeploy weapons going, and that's the scary thing, Jason. What if there's 3 more redeploy weapons in the next set, and you're able to play Jango, 2 other guys with 5 redeploy guns?
No more redeploy. I look at this game and sometimes I see a rule. I'm like, man, one day there will just be a deck full of redeploy weapons.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll just play 4 stormtroopers,
Yep.
and you will just always have stormtroopers. You have to have target priority, but they have cards like the best defense and cannon fodder that they're already they're probably going to print more of a card like that. So
yeah, exactly. Yep.
It's crazy. Yep. Moving on from Jango though.
Wait. There's more than Jango?
There is more than Jango.
Okay,
I want to
fine.
talk about
If you say so.
Jabba Blue Shell.
Yes, Jabba Blue
Shell. I want to generate it like that because it's not necessarily super blue shell. It's probably more like a 60-40 in the blue to yellow. Mm-hmm. But what it is it's Jabba's control elements.
Yep.
Mixed with the control that you get from blue, as well as the power of attack or defense that you can get from blue. And that's kind of the difference between who you want to run it with.
Yeah, and it's not, to be clear, it's not the blue shell we talked about before, the blue aggro shell with no mercy and that kind of stuff. It's the power of the holocron plus all the awesome pieces that blue has.
Correct. And so your 2 culprits that you're going to see are either Darth Vader or Count Dooku. Dooku's going to give you another die and a little more consistency on his own, but Vader's going to give you a superior ability as far as when the game is activating. Because the reality is you're going to kill Jabba first against most decks.
Yeah.
So that means that Dooku's ability is probably not on, even though you're like, I could just kill Dooku. You still want to kill Jabba first. Even if Dooku didn't have ability that shielded him, you still want to kill Jabba first.
Yeah.
And then you have Vader, every single turn is ticking you down. So you get a little bit more consistency of dice from Dooku and a little bit larger range of dice, which is nice. But obviously Darth Vader is Darth Vader. He is very strong. They have pretty similar health pools due to Dooku's ability. Dooku with probably a little more health. But you're going to get a little more pressure and probably get a better use out of the discard on Jabba out of Mr. Vader, only because the reality is if it's play one card, spend one card for a reroll, plus Vader, that's 3 cards, a single disrupt or discard is probably going to be used from Jabba, and that'll clear their hand return.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a little more consistency on that hand clear.
It's interesting. I agree. It's usually 3 cards you need to clear from their hand. It's usually not 4. And Dooku's sides cost a resource to do his 2 discards. So if you discard one with Jabba and one with Dooku, you get 4, and it costs you 1, and you're usually only hitting 3. Whereas with Vader, you get the same 3 and save a resource, and you're not having to roll a specific side. So I agree in that. If you're just looking to mill, and you're not looking at anything else, Vader's mill might be more effective. It takes a little bit longer sometimes, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to do an in-depth write-up. There was actually a really big thread over are Dooku's dice better than Vader's dice?
Yeah. We're going to get to that at the
situations in which one is better.
Yeah, one of our viewers.
Interesting situations in which one is better. We don't have to talk about it necessarily right now, but there are interesting situations, and we'll talk about it. But to me, it's just your preference. I think they're both fantastic.
Yep.
Obviously, Darth Vader, one thing I like about him is he kind of has a taunt in which you want to kill Vader because it's Darth Vader, and you just let Darth Vader run around killing all your dudes. So with sometimes the Jabba sneak, I like to call it, where Jabba's just sneakily sitting on the side while they're trying to kill Vader.
It's just Jabba.
It's just Jabba.
He's
not doing anything.
What could he do?
He's like taking all your resources and all your cards. And it's just so frustrating. So I do think that Darth Vader has that on Dooku, but Dooku's consistency is really, really nice. And we'll talk about that more. But that combination of cards, it's very good. It's been seen. Tiny loves it. Obviously, we just talked about it winning an event with the Vader, the single die, double die Jabba. It is very strong, and you're getting a lot of really good cards out of both of them that work together pretty well, and there's not too many weaknesses in those cards.
Yeah. I have a hard time even coming up with another Tier 1 deck. I used to think Han Rey was Tier 1. I think it's more like Tier 1.5. It's not quite as explosive as Jango Veers. Like, if you want to run that hardcore aggro deck, I would say Jango Veers is probably better than Han Rey. Because Han only has the 2 damage sides, you miss a little bit more often, and Rey's dice are just jeez, don't even talk to me about Rey's dice.
Yeah, and you actually are a little weaker to control on Han Rey because you're relying on the guns to come up, and it's pretty much only going to come out of Han plus upgrades.
Yep.
So because of that, you're looking at Han has a resource on one of those, so that's controllable. And then obviously the die itself, it's controllable. The one that doesn't have a resource is electroshockable, so that's controllable.
Yep.
And so you can kind of control that. Plus, while you can do the cheat, the reality is unless you're really doing a great job of looping with the graveyard, you're likely not going to be able to get maximum efficiency out of the cheat. So like we said, Jango's cheating all the time, and his other friends are probably supplying him with extra guns and things like that. The Han Rey is a little less consistent. A little harder to take down, but a little less consistent.
Yeah. Interesting note, though. I gave it to Bruno, my friend that I was talking about before, who's just an amazing card player. He played it last week, and he was like, there's some cards in here that are bad. I was like, okay. And so he made some changes, and he did stuff like 2 disarms went into the deck, and 2 use the force went back into the deck to basically say, like, all right, I'm going to have more options for both control and helping myself. And then on those turns where I don't do that well, let's say I roll 2 jetpacks that are +3s and a Han that's good, you electroshock the Han, well, now I'm just going to disarm your Kylo Saber.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love disarm with the high monsters. It's very strong.
Yeah, so I think there's some more innovation to be done in the Han Rey deck, but I still feel like it's a good deck, don't get me wrong, but I just don't feel like it's on the same level of any Jango deck pretty much. And I think probably the Jabba control deck. I think it's tier 1 also. I have a hard time saying that without testing it more. Control just scares me because you can have a great game and a great deck, but your opponent on turn 2 gets lucky and rolls a god roll and you don't happen to have enough control, you may just lose the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's classic red deck wins from Magic. I mean, sometimes they're going to have the turn 1, 2, 3 perfect, setup.
Yep.
And it's just going to work for them. But that's inconsistent. And if you want to play enough rounds of Swiss, you got to probably go better than 4-2, maybe a couple 4-2s and 5-1s and the undefeateds. I mean, It's not that easy to be so consistent. So I would look for that to be the exactly what is going on with that.
Sure. What are some other decks you think are near the top?
So we'll go to the tier 2. We just talked about Hanrei a ton. Don't need to talk about it more. We had a whole piece on it. It is a great deck. Play it if you want to use Han Solo, because it's pretty much the only way to do so, in my personal opinion, right now. I've been trying some other methods. They're failing.
Me too. Me too. So close. I was playing a Han Rebel Trooper deck and trying It's a Trap and stuff.
Or is it double? Is it double higher gun? Double Rebel Trooper?
Yeah. Han double Rebel Trooper, but it just wasn't. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like
I tried
there.
Han Rebel Trooper hired gun.
Okay.
That didn't work. That didn't work either.
Yeah.
So what would I say is near the tippy top? I believe that the Akbar Double Trooper deck is the best red hero deck to come out. Maybe even probably just the best red deck in general. Red focus deck. I mean, it's really powerful. It'll blow you up.
It might be the best hero deck overall. I think it's real close.
It could be. Yeah, it really does pop off. It's really good against Jango.
Oh yeah.
And if they don't hit the Jango roll, then you'll get eaten up, whether it's a trapping you for a ton of damage, or you can even make some really crazy plays that can hold off your opponent. You obviously have hit and run also to get the additional activation.
Mm-hmm.
You've got squad tactics, which allows you to eat up multiple die if they have multiple die with 2 guardians. Mm-hmm. You can squad activate both your characters, take both their die, and now they might be left with modifiers, which is frustrating to them. So you've got a lot of good options, and red is just so synergistic within its own right that it does damage. And those Rebel Troopers are freaking amazing.
They really are.
I thought need to be way up your list. I think I have him as like the 4th best hero character in my personal list. He is incredible, maybe even higher. He is really freaking good. His sides are super strong.
They are. They really are. I think the problem with that deck, or the problem dealing with it, is that a lot of its damage comes out of nowhere, much like Jango. Like, It's a Trap is just something that you can't handle. All In seems like you can handle it, because if Akbar's die comes up as a 2 focus, you just have to remove it. You just have to know that. But if they can go hit and run into Akbar's die, then you're screwed, because then they just all in and then all the damage comes. So the point is they have all of these different ways to do Jango-type shenanigans. But again, the reason that we think they're a step below that is because Jango gets to do the Jango-type shenanigans automatically all the time.
Yeah, but Red Hero specifically has some real ball busters. Yeah. I mean, they've got, like I said, hit and run is absolutely nuts. Yep. It's a free activation. Then you've got, like I said, you've got It's a Trap. Obviously, what that card does, it's an ambush card that also chooses one of your opponent, and then you can change any number of your red dice to that symbol. So because it's ambush, you can flip everything to a gun and then shoot all your guns, killing their characters. Fantastic. Yep. Also, defensive position is a freaking blowout. Like, oh my lord, that card can just really wreak havoc. I've seen it do so many bad things.
Let's talk about that card real quick.
Whenever you finally get it.
A lot of people might not know this card. For one, defensive position says, if you have the battlefield, remove all of an opponent's dice showing a value of 2 or higher. A lot of people forget this card even exists. And then you're like, wait, what? What just happened?
Yeah, I got blown out super hard by this the other day, and my whole turn was pretty much bankrupt because I rolled so good that it just ate me just right in the face. Yeah. So defensive position is really good. And then obviously even Field Medic is just a solid card. I mean, most of the time it's better than defensive stance. Mm-hmm. And it does work. So I mean, red heroes, I really do believe are really fantastic and doubt for. And also, Scout is just so freaking good.
Yeah,
Scout with a focus, has a 2 disrupt, for 1 resource. It has a resource and then 2 specials, which allow you to look at your opponent's hand, discard the cheapest card from it. Often that's going to be the negation or control that you're looking to grab, or it's really great for busting Sith holocrons as well, because it costs 0, it goes back to their hand, you resolve your scout, whatever. Do they want to use their control to keep their discard alive and keep their engine going, or do you starve that deck of their resource bonus, which is Sith holocron?
Yeah, I feel like
So it's good.
That deck is probably the most underrated deck in the meta. I think a lot of people haven't seen it, and the first time you see it, it's really, really difficult to beat because you don't really know what's happening. All these cards come out of nowhere and blow you out. I think as you play it a little more, it becomes much more manageable.
Yeah, I'm literally like discarding force throws against it.
Oh yeah,
I'm playing. So like, I don't want to see a gun.
Yep,
it's got a gun.
No guns.
So it's
yeah,
like, give me the lightsabers, give me something else.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, all those force powers have guns, so even against blue cards, you're going to be able to snipe out some things with its trap. So, and also, its trap is really good for resources. I want to talk about that just because it's bonkers. If they have if you have something you want to spend a lot of resources for, and it's the end of a turn, they have a resource showing, you play it's a trap. It can give you like $5 or $6 rather than re-rolling trying to fish for guns. And now you've got so many resources that can do so much for you in the following turns.
Yeah, I was trying to do originally when I was playing It's a Trap, I was using it to turn specials for Poe, and that was crazy. When you could pull that off, awesome. And it would be like, oh, you rolled a special there. I'm gonna It's a Trap. Poe has 2 specials. I'll discard a force throw to throw your 1 good die, and then I'll discard some other awesome thing and crush you some more. That was crazy.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
So that's a good deck. It's a solid deck.
Yep, I agree. I think another solid deck is this is more deeper into the tier 2 is Luke Akbar. I think a lot of people look at Luke Akbar as a really top level deck. I think once you realize that all you have to do is control Akbar, it gets a lot worse. A lot of the tricks go away. If you kill Akbar right away, you can't do leadership. You can't do the all-in shenanigans. It's just Luke rolling a pretty good die. It's only 2 damage side, so it's not an amazing die. It's a pretty solid die, and then you just beat the deck pretty easily.
Yeah, it's far less, but it is. I think it might be one of the hottest decks when left on its own with its own devices.
Oh yeah.
I mean, just playing. I was playing it the other day. It's like action 1, it binds all things. Action 2, force training. Blah 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 blah. Do some damage. Next turn, I think I played lightsaber all in the same turn, and it's just like, and then you're just dead. And there was literally nothing you could do about it. It was just chopping people up. And those are just force trainings. Much less when I overwrite them with use the force or not use force. I was calling Alec Guinness, but one with the force or Luke's lightsaber or another lightsaber or a force throw. You're really just hounding them. And drawing a card, while bad against mill because it is forced, it is very good to replenish your hand. It's good against the discard decks because it keeps a couple rerolls in your hand, and you can really do a lot of damage really, really fast with Luke. It's pretty impressive. Yeah,
I agree. It's a solid deck, but I think it's solidly in that tier 2. The question I have is hero mill decks. Where do they stand? Are they tier 1 or are they a little bit below that? I feel like in an aggro meta, they dip a bit. In a control meta, they become really good. So what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I agree. I've seen I guess the most popular one is, or the one that I've seen is the Padme Double Trooper. It is really frustrating. I played against it 2 or 3 times this week, actually. And 2 games I ended with 0 cards and won the game.
Yeah.
And then 1 time I ended with 2 cards and I won the game. So it's a run. I mean, it's not bad, but it's tough. It's tough to say. You have to do a lot of early claiming if you're going to use a discard claim, which can sometimes hurt you. But I'm not sure that in this meta it's the right time to be playing it. But if you hit your cards correctly, it still will work against someone like Jango Veers, or Jango anything. But it's tough. I don't know. It's tough to say.
I like playing that deck as Elite Padme Rebel Trooper Padawan so that I can go with Patience. I feel like Patience really steps up the speed of the deck. The problem is you're still left with that same endgame issue of Your opponent, by the end of the game, has a bunch of upgrades on guys because you haven't threatened them at all. And now they have a turn or two at the end to kill you when they're almost milled. And they can often do that as long as they don't roll bad.
Yeah, my problem too is that if you are playing up, my problem with the patience concept is that if it doesn't strike home really hard early, then Padme is not very effective because Padme, you really need to be spending that resource to discard 2 cards because it's a very significant difference than discarding just 1. Or not discarding, but milling off the top of their deck.
Yep.
So you really need to be hitting the 2 cards, the 2 cards, the 2 cards. And if that happens, if like turn 1, you roll out Padme, you get two of them that you can't control, then you take 4 cards, that's humongous.
Yes.
So... but where's your money? Where's your money? Hopefully those rebel troopers are giving you money, because otherwise, or the rebel trooper power aren't giving you money, because otherwise it's not there. The economy's not there.
Yeah, it's an interesting deck. I know a lot of people have had success with it. I had a ton of success with a patience build, sort of back right before all the cards were released, and then aggro sort of took over, and it was totally dominant and oppressive in a mid-range control meta environment.
Yeah, no, patience is a blowout card, and there's a lot of cheap resources or a lot of cheap upgrades that you can put out there that do work for you as well as fuel your patience.
All right, last deck I want to mention, because you can't talk about the meta and not mention it, is the Vader Raider deck. So where do you think Vader Raider stands these days?
Boo. Get it out of here. It's worse than Luke Akbar, and that's not good.
Wow, you think it's worse than Luke Akbar?
I do think it's worse than Luke Akbar. Luke Akbar is very consistent. I feel like when I play Vader Raider, I'm at the mercy of what I roll. And that's a very frustrating feeling for a deck that doesn't roll a ton of dice.
Yep.
It's not like the Jango Veers, because it's not going to be like pop, pop. It's just not there as much. Does it put a lot of pressure on your opponent? Yes. Is it scary? Yes. But until there is more melee damage coming out of the blue side, I just don't see it being that fantastic. I'm going to put it at a tier 3 deck, which I would say tier 3 is a deck that's capable of winning a tournament, but is the worst deck in that round.
Oh man,
that's so I think it's good enough to win a tournament, but it's the worst of all the deck lists that I could think of.
I disagree with you. I think it's like 1.5. I think that the big issue with the deck is that everyone knows all its tricks, right? Good players know that if you have damage showing and 2 resources, that may be 5, 6, 7 damage, right? And so you have to do something. You have to be ready for that. And the same thing with, even if they have a blank showing, if they grab a resource, there's a good chance it's so they can force strike you. But the difference is everyone knows that now. For a while, people didn't, and so this deck was able to just stomp everybody, and it stomps new players. They have no idea what's going on. You do all these tricks, and they're like, this deck is unbeatable. But I think the difference is Luke Akbar, people don't know how to quite play against it yet because they haven't seen it as much. And I think once you see that deck more, I think Vader Raider still has more raw power because the events are so strong that it's a better deck. But I would agree that right now I think you'll have more success with Luke Akbar, but I don't think it's a better deck.
I think Luke Akbar has a lot of defensive tech in it, and that allows you to keep Akbar alive if you see that that's the goal. So let's see if you can dig in. Well, first of all, that deck's one of the best claiming decks that I've seen, because you pretty much just roll out shit. Sometimes you don't even care about rolling Akbar. Like if you want to claim, you can claim.
Sure.
So you've got the great red events that allow you to defend, also field medic, and that you can also even use willpower if you really want to go deep, but I probably wouldn't. But that's definitely in the wheelhouse. Whereas Vader Raider is like, you're just at the mercy of everything. Just to me, it's so frustrating because they're like, okay, here we go, and I roll my dice, and this is what they are, and I guess I'll just spend cards rerolling them, and that's as good as I get.
Yeah, because I'm not going to spend money anyway to play these cards. I can't afford anything.
And while No Mercy is a blowout card, like, do you keep a No Mercy if you keep it? If you see it in your opener, probably not. But then if you don't get it, then not doing the thing that you said you do. And if you do keep it, then you're at the mercy of discard to keep a card that really had no potential until you got a God hand for it.
Yeah.
So you're looking for God rolls and God draws, and to me, the sheer power of dart with 2 dice is carrying the ability for that to win a tournament, which it can, but I just don't like it as much.
Yeah, I don't like the deck. I don't play the deck, but I think I still think
scary.
It's in scary. That tier 1.5. I don't like playing against it either. I actually played against.
0.5 mean to you? So you think that's better than Han Rey? No way that's better than
No, I think Han Rey is better.
So then, okay, so what is this 0.5 shenanigan? Let's get some criteria, Tiny. Talking criteria here.
So,
tier 1 is the tippy top.
Yeah.
Where at what tier? Let's get some tiers. Let's go 5 tiers deep. 5 being you should not play this deck. 4 meaning fun to experiment, but probably not going to win a tournament. The top of 3 is capable of winning a tournament,
okay,
but probably going to have a tough time. 2 is a strong deck, and 1 is the best decks.
Yep.
So I think where is that deck? Is
this deck? This deck is this, and Han would be at the very top of tier 2. Then I think a step above the other tier 2 decks, with Han being better than this deck.
It just falls to so much control. Even Rebel Trooper alone totally smashes the Vader deck, because you're probably going to get one of your dice to show melee on a good turn, and then he just eats it, and then he shields up, and he's just this little asshole who just eats your dice every turn. And you have no way to cheat.
Yeah,
you're just hoping that you can blow him with a no mercy.
Yeah, I mean you're right. Backup muscle's still good though, doing work.
It is.
Force Strike is such a blowout out of nowhere.
And Sith Holocron.
Yes, and Sith Holocron lets you do. There's just some games where you just win off of Sith Holocron.
It's so ridiculous.
If you get 3 upgrades on Vader in 3 turns because of Holocron, then you just win.
I just think that you put Vader in deck, it can be scary. Just period, it can carry a game, and sometimes if you don't get the stuff to deal with him, it sucks. But sometimes he just vanishes, and then you're left with a Tusken Raider and it's garbage.
Oh yeah, I've played plenty of games and played as them and against them where it's just no fun. But I played my 8-year-old yesterday or 2 days ago. She played this deck. I played Han Rey. I could not roll, and she was just rolling damage. Every time she didn't roll damage, she was like, this game is mean. I didn't roll damage this time. I was like, you've rolled 78 damage on 4 turns. You can shut up, girl. So she won. It was a close one. Possible. I got second chance out. She got really upset by that I was cheating. But even with second chance and looping, it didn't matter. He did so much damage. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, it is capable of that. It's a 21-point character. He better do something.
Yeah.
He better be the best character, which for the points, or not including points, he is the best character. If you could pick any single character, you would pick Darth Vader. So he's going to be able to carry that. He's more than 2/3 of your points. But from there, I'm just not as convinced as you are.
I'm looking forward to seeing who you can end up pairing him with. I think it's going to be limiting. I don't think there's going to be that 9-point character that makes Vader even better. I think Vader Raider might be the best incarnation we see of this.
Yeah, it might be. It's a really good point, because Tusken Raider does have a fantastic ability that works with the tools that you give him.
Exactly.
Plus, you're probably going to see more melee stuff, so this actually might get a little better with the same characters.
Yep.
I would say you'd be looking at maybe a red elite guard type character who might be 9 points, one of the Emperor's guards.
Yep, that could
He
work.
might be really cool, and he would be melee focused, so it could help him. What if he has Guardian and he has a good amount of health?
Yeah, I thought that's where you were going with that. Yeah, that would be really good.
Exactly. So this is a good that could be a good thing for him. And that way, if they put the damage on the one guy, you're happy. If they put damage, if they look like they're going to put it on Vader, you can Guardian it away.
Hey, FFG, I got a card for you. Palace Guard. He has 4 blanks. He costs. We'll say
4 blanks. He could be a good character.
8. He has 12 health and Guardian.
You're crazy.
He doesn't do anything. He's just Guardian.
I'm going to write him right now. Are you ready? I already have him in my head. It's 1 melee damage, 2 melee damage, 1 shield, 1 disrupt, and 1 resource. And he has Guardian. And he costs 9 points, and he has 11 health.
That's probably too much health for what you described. He's probably more like 9 health. But, sure.
I mean, he's worse than... Well, let me look at Phasma. So Phasma is 12 points for 11 health, 1-2 focus. Yeah, she's probably a little bit. Fine, 10 health.
Sure,
10
maybe.
health.
Yeah, something like that. I think that would be fun. I want to see more cards with Guardian in it. Maybe I don't. Maybe I just think I do, and I'll really regret this statement when we have more.
I love Guardian because, for the people who don't have the hard control, it's that kind of hard control-ish thing for the damage portion of the game.
Yep.
And it's fun. I think it's a really cool thing. I love seeing the Rebel Trooper. I think it's very tactical in how you use him. You can both bait out their dice and use Rebel Trooper, but you can also bait the Rebel Trooper to not activate by not rolling dice and not getting the damage, so on and so forth.
Yep. So I think that's a pretty good look at the meta. There's a lot of other decks people are playing, and I'm not saying your deck isn't good if I didn't list it. Those are just sort of the most common decks you need to be aware of, and I think we'll probably have an episode in the future where that's all we do is look at how do you take on each of these decks. But we can't do that today.
I think a monthly meta update.
I like that. Yep, that sounds good. All right, well, I want to turn to I like to have a little rules section each week, and this rules section is not really about rules, but it's something that I've been seeing a lot of, and it's like a niceness thing. Like, how nice are you at the board? And so this is the question. I want to ask you this question. If you are playing with somebody, and they are playing with Jango Fett, and you roll your dice, and you wait for them, and you wait a second, do you say, especially let's say you are playing Rey, and you play an ambush card on Rey, you get 2 actions now. You roll your dice, and now you get to resolve them. But there is a window for them to resolve Jango. Do you tell your opponent, excuse me, would you like to roll Jango in this window?
Do we have a ruling on who gets the action first?
Jango has to resolve. His ability is, after an opponent activates their character, Jango may activate. So he would have to activate.
So how does Rey have this? So you're saying you played an ambush on Rey, getting 2 activations.
2 actions.
You activate Rey.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. I would say that I activate him. I activate her.
Yep.
And I would give it a pause, and then I'd do something else. I mean,
Yeah.
the Jango player should be hot to trot on using Jango. It's not like an accident.
Right.
It's not like if you give them 2 to 3 seconds, like you're like, okay, I'm going to roll Rey. And you roll it, and you set it out there. You take 1, 2. Okay, well, now I'm going to do this too. Then they miss their opportunity to do it. I don't think that you don't have to be like, would you like to activate Jango? You don't have to do that for them if they don't want to, but I think that they should be pretty. Usually people are like almost rolling their dice before I do.
Yeah.
When they play Jango.
I know.
Like, whoa. Let me roll my dice first.
And to me, it goes even farther beyond that. It's not simply I don't have to be so nice that I give them the option. I feel like it's insulting, right? Like if I'm playing a Jango deck and you have several characters and you roll a character, don't ask me if I want to roll Jango. I know how my deck works, right? I played this game before. I built this deck. It's built around Jango. I'll roll Jango when I want to roll Jango. Play your game. I will play my game. It's condescending and insulting to walk your opponent through their game plan. I personally think it's a nasty thing to do, not a nice thing to do.
That's fair. I think that is a good point. I think that when in a tournament setting, you should definitely not say anything.
Yeah.
Do your stuff. Take up a short pause and then go.
Yep.
But in a casual setting, if they're like, "Oh, I want to activate Jango," like obviously don't be a dick. Let them have it. You're trying to learn. You're trying to play your best game so that you can learn in your best environment. Because someone who is sharp isn't going to forget the Jango.
Right.
If that's what they wanted. So.
Yeah.
Let them do
the other thing is if they're new, that's a wholly different thing, right? Like I'm not talking about playing with a new player who doesn't know what they're doing. I'm talking about in a real game, your opponent, if they built a Jango deck, they know what they're doing. They know when they're activating Jango. And then the same thing is for Vader. Vader has this, you may force your opponent to discard, and so there's another discussion about that, right? Like, do you have to say, oh, would you like me to discard for Vader? Again, I think it's the same thing. It's really condescending to do that. It's like, oh, really? You're so great. You're going to play my game for me. You know what? I had a reason I didn't want you to discard. So go ahead. Continue, please.
Yeah, I mean, that's on the Darth Vader character for good or for bad to make sure the player to make sure that they're doing their job. Period.
So my take is you're playing against a new player, walk them through stuff. Sure. I mean, when I play new players, I go way beyond that. I don't simply say, are you sure you don't want to trigger that? I'll say, let's talk about this board state. Are you sure you want to make that play? Walk them through what I see as the possibilities and then say, now make whatever play you want. If they make the same play, that's great. But I've given them sort of the option of this is how you want to think about the game.
Yeah, and in the tournament rules for tournaments, there are, I believe there's some rules for missed triggers and things like that that will help clear it up. It does sometimes involve warnings and things like that. So I believe that's all in the tournament document.
Yeah, and these are mays. These are not musts. You may activate Jango. You may do Vader. It is on the player. You are under, first of all, you are under no obligation to help them play their own game, and really, it's kind of insulting if you do.
Yep.
All right. Last thing, I'd like to take some viewer questions. We have a viewer, Smurly, who asked us the question that we started addressing earlier. What's better with Jabba, Vader or Dooku? What do you think? Simple answer. Which one's better?
Vader.
I'm gonna go with Dooku. And now we'll round it out slightly. Go ahead. Why do you think Vader is better than Dooku?
I have a theory in a lot of games, and I usually apply it. And what that one is I like to keep my points on the table, or I like to keep my value in the game and active. And if I'm playing Jabba, first of all, actually, let's go back and state that they're both fantastic, no doubt.
Yes.
And it's pretty much preference. I don't think that either of us would disagree that it's preference at this point.
Yep.
But with Vader, I get to put the pressure on my opponent every turn. It's consistent.
True.
They must discard a card. The discard in this game is such a big deal. Discarding cards is a massive deal. It means so many. It's not just a loss of a card. It's a loss of a resource that you have to reroll. It's your health points. It's everything.
Yeah.
It is a really big deal in this game. So let that be known. So he puts that pressure on. We were talking earlier about the math of what you want them to discard, and Tiny often admitted that he was making them discard 4 when they only had 3. Because I think that's a magic number. And because you generally don't have a 1 discard, I think you have one on. What do you have a 1 on? You have a 1 on maybe a random force power. And I know like Cunning has one.
And you can't play Cunning. They just killed Jabba. Don't play Cunning.
Yeah. I'm just saying. Your options are limited for the 1. So often you're looking at a 2 discard like Mind Probe or obviously Jabba. Dooku has 2, so on and so forth. This allows you to make your opponent make bad discard decisions, which I often try to do. I often try to get my cards to an uneven number so that they either leave me with 1 or they waste of the quality of the roll. And I think that doesn't, while it's the biggest deal, I think that it can be frustrating. And if you had Vader and you knew that would be leveled off, or at least more likely to be leveled off, that's a good thing. Plus, with Vader, if you activate first, if they have a grip that they like all the cards in, then now they're forced to unfortunately get rid of one of them, which is very frustrating. If you see someone keep a lot of cards in their hand, like 4 cards or 3 cards, you know that when you activate Vader, it's going to be something of significance unless the 2 cards they drew are complete garbage, which you made the deck. I'd hope they wouldn't be.
Yeah.
So I think that Vader puts that pressure on them. And the final thing I'd like to say, or I have 2 more things. One, a single focus, which Jabba has 2 of, is stronger when focusing a single Vader die because he has 2 and 3. So yes, while Dooku can do more damage with the correct rolls and the right placement, a single focus goes further when using Vader. Yeah. Finally, both Jabba and Vader have 2 disrupt. That is incredibly powerful, and that really can keep the game going in your favor as far as the tempo of the game. Alongside your force powers, you're going to have a lot of ability to control their resources, and that is incredibly frustrating to play against because otherwise you kind of become a one and done kind of deck. You're talking about Jango. It's often play something and then go. And if you strip their cards at that point, that's good. Also, just showing the disrupt side will make them do things, and then you can then focus or reroll later. So it's very good. It's a very powerful ability, and I love seeing 2 disrupt. It's probably one of the most amazing defining sides for a character for me personally. That both the 2 discard and the 2 disrupt are very powerful in this game.
I think one more plus is it's 1 less die, which is also a minus, but it can be a plus in that you can run stuff like Frozen Wastes and know that you have less actions before you get to pull that amazing battlefield.
Certainly.
All right, so let's turn to Dooku then. Actually, one more reason why Darth Vader's better is against bad players, they will try to kill him. They see Darth Vader and they go,
we talked about that.
It's Darth Vader! So that's a real boon for him. Dooku, I feel like, the reason I like Dooku best, I think, is because Jabba will die. So let's say Jabba dies turn 3. You've lost that 2 discard, and now it's just all on the slowest ever mill you've ever seen, which is 1 card a turn from Vader, praying that you find a mind probe and you can actually roll it, because if you don't, it's like 4. I've had games. I used to play this deck. I used to actually play a Vader Trooper mill deck, which sounds like madness. But it would take like 14 rounds to mill them out, because they would be like, well, I'm not going to do rerolls. You're going to have to do 1 mill a turn for 14 turns.
Yeah, I mean that he is not very efficient at that for certain.
Yeah, and so Dooku has the 2 mil side, and you have 2 dice with it, so that's really solid once Jabba dies. The focus side is really good. I just love that side, and having 4 dice be focused means there were so many games, so many turns I've had where I roll Dooku, I roll Jabba, 3 of them are focus, and my opponent is going, I can't make a plan here. Like, there's no plan I can make because you can literally do anything you want. And it's like, yeah, no, I can. So good luck with that.
Yeah, and alongside the force powers, that is very powerful.
Exactly, because you can do, and then like if you have data pads out there or a cunning out there, like you can do all these interesting moves also. And when you have a bunch of focus and you have crime lords in your deck, it's really scary to claim against focus because they could do crazy stuff where they're like ace in the hole crime lord, doesn't matter what I roll, I focus it. Oh, I'm a couple of resources short, I'll focus these into resources, boom, crime lord.
Yep, definitely more consistency, which I think is where Dooku really shines.
Yeah, and then health. He has a little bit more health usually.
Usually, yeah, it's pretty tough to buster his health. I guess one thing I want to talk about the disrupt real quick on Vader, which you brought to my attention, where you're like, Jabba's gonna die.
Yeah,
the disrupt will keep him alive longer than the focus on Dooku's dice will, right? Because and also Vader has a shield.
Yeah, the
so
shield's
he's much better at keeping. If you're forced to use those sides, it's much better at keeping him alive, in my opinion. Disrupt is just very frustrating.
It is. But at the end of the game, it can be less important if they already have their upgrades on. And so that's what I'm thinking. Like, I think you're right that first 2 turns, Vader's better. 3 and 4, it's a toss-up. And as we go into 5, 6, 7, 8, I think that's when I look at Dooku and I say, now I want Dooku on my team. And I feel like this deck is going long. I don't feel like it's a fast deck, and that's why I look at Dooku and I prefer that.
Yeah, I think that the Vader version is going to have the ability to have a burstier game. It's going to put them in a bad situation faster. And that is probably less variance, or more variance. But I do believe it to be more lethal. So it's really the question of consistency versus variance, which is tough. It's a tough call, and I do strongly believe that a more stable pick as far as the consistency of your game.
And I think they're different decks. I think Vader has more chance to be explosive because you can run cards like Force Strike, and you're not going to run Force Strike with Dooku. If you're running Vader, you have a better chance at killing one of the guys quicker. Whereas, especially the deck I built that I was talking about with confiscations and prized possessions, I'm usually not killing anyone. I'm trying to control their dice as best I can, but I've kind of given up on the whole plan of killing one of them, unless it's accidental. I had a game where I rolled two melees first turn and just trucked someone for 4 and was like, well, I'm actually going to kill someone in this game. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, when I was playing against the Padme mill deck, the Rebel Troopers like rolled like 1 damage and like something else, and they're like, well, I'll reroll because looking for resources and shields. Yeah. And then he rolls it again, it's 4 damage. He's like, well, I guess I take this 4 damage and I try to kill that stormtrooper.
Yep. I may actually kill a guy.
When your goal is not to do that, you can do that, specifically with using force throw, force choke. I mean, there will be damage dealt.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I think you're right. I think both are good. I think it kind of depends on where you want to go, and I think there's a ton of different decks in here. Because like I said, there's my deck, which is super control. There's a Dooku Jabba deck that runs like 2 thermal detonators and is looking to do a lot of damage if it needs to. And then the Vader Jabba deck, I think, focuses a little more on doing damage.
Yeah, I think it's a good variation. I think it's a good feeling to be different, and I think it's kind of cool that it works like that.
Yeah, me too. All right, well, thanks for stopping by, Jason. Another successful episode of the Smugglers Den. Again, we are sponsored by Broken Egg Games tokens. Go ahead, go to the site, and put TG Games in the discount code coupon. You can stop by Patreon, Tiny Grimes, if you want to support the channel there. All kinds of stuff happening there, different levels, just talking about the game, talking decks, whatever you want to do. So thanks, Jason, for coming by, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.